Good evening. Welcome to the Kelly Wright Show from the nation's capital, and we'll get to your headlines in just a moment. But first, a week ago in my opening observations, I pointed out how when it comes to the coronavirus, this is not a drill. We are about to experience a pandemic. I explained then that we should not enter into an atmosphere of fear-mongering, but we should be very aware that we must be proactive in taking every precaution to protect ourselves from the virus. Well, a week later, here we are. The status of where we are is that it is a pandemic. Schools are shutting down, stocks are tumbling, professional sporting events in some areas are being played without any fans in the stand. Airline flights are being canceled, cruise ships are not sailing, some people are getting sick and placing themselves in quarantine, and sadly, some people are dying. It's happening all over the world. The novel coronavirus is spreading and causing everyone to change the pattern of how they socially engage with each other. Even at my church on Sunday, I was greeted by the usher who raised his hands to avoid shaking my hand, explaining that we've been told not to embrace each other or shake each other's hands due to the possibility of spreading the coronavirus. The pastor even explained to the congregation that it was unwise to start shaking hands in church. Even taking the offering and communion would have to be done differently now. And I thought to myself, how have we changed? I have never seen a disease have this kind of impact on the world, yet I certainly understand the urgent need for everyone to not take the disease lightly. From Congress to the White House to your house to my house, we have to arm ourselves with knowledge about how to protect each other. Here's the point that really matters. Do not panic. Do not cower in fear. We must stand in solidarity and take every proactive measure there is with all due alacrity to protect yourself and your loved ones. Take action immediately. And those are my opening remarks. And now, here are your headlines. Spread of the coronavirus creating anxiety worldwide, world stocks tumbling overnight with investors bracing for the economic fallout of the epidemic. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., members of Congress are also becoming increasingly nervous about coronavirus. There is growing pressure on leadership to take steps to protect lawmakers, even potentially recessing for a period of 2 weeks, according to congressional sources. New coronavirus cases were confirmed in Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. In Italy, some 16 million people remained in quarantine after the government there announced a lockdown in Lombardy and other northern regions. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the head of infectious diseases at the National Institute of Health, says people who may be more susceptible to illnesses may need to avoid large gatherings.
Well, I think right now something that's important that I hope the American people appreciate is that the risk of getting into trouble with this infection, namely if you are infected, is overwhelmingly weighted towards people with underlying conditions and the elderly. And that's the reason why if you are an elderly person with an underlying condition, if you get infected, the risk of getting into trouble is considerable. So it's our responsibility to protect the vulnerable. When I say protect, I mean right now, not wait until things get worse. Say no large crowds, no long trips, and above all, don't get on a cruise ship.
The majority of deaths have occurred in Washington state, and they are preparing quarantine sites in case the number of infections spike dramatically. Now, an update on the arrival of the luxury ocean liner docking at the port of Oakland, California, with more than 3,500 people on board, including at least 21 with the coronavirus. Joining us now with the latest is reporter Duncan McKenzie McCart. Duncan, the ordeal for the passengers aboard this California cruise ship, the Grand Princess, is it coming to an end?
That's a very good question, Kelly, because a lot of these passengers will undergo a 14-day mandatory quarantine period, but it certainly has been an ordeal for the 3,533 people on board, because this particular voyage set sail on February 21, and ever since then it's gone from a holiday to an absolute nightmare for a lot of these passengers. Of course, after a couple of days A lot of the passengers on board started to suffer from flu-like symptoms, respiratory problems, and as a result, that had been linked to the coronavirus from another voyage that set sail on February 11 when a Placer County man, 71-year-old man, died from the coronavirus. So, yeah, from that particular point, this voyage set sail from San Francisco to Honolulu in Hawaii, and as a result, the link was made, and passengers were told to stay in their rooms. They were effectively under quarantine, and from about Wednesday or Thursday, this particular ship, the Grand Princess, has been off the coast of California and effectively into quarantine.
Wow.
But as we know, only 45 of these particular cases have been tested, Kelly. 21 have come back positive. 19 of those have been crew members, and 2 of those have been passengers. So we'll get an understanding over the next coming days as to how many of these particular passengers have tested positive to coronavirus.
And Duncan, with more than 3,500 people on board, what has been the mood of the passengers, and how big of an exercise has this been for state and federal medical authorities?
Yeah, Kelly, it's been a huge undertaking. There's no doubt about that. I mean, a lot of these passengers, especially the California residents, will now undergo quarantine at the Travis Air Force Base. A lot of these passengers from other nationalities like Canada, they'll be taken on a chartered flight. 240 of them will be taken to the Trenton base in Ontario, Canada. It certainly has been an exercise for Governor Gavin Newsom and, of course, the federal authorities as well. I mean, one of the big problems has been trying to contain all these passengers at this particular port of Oakland as well. I mean, that particular port was chosen because it was a big port, it was easy to seal off, and the safest way to make sure that this virus doesn't spread. So yeah, it's certainly been a high pressure exercise, but it certainly does start now with this 14-day quarantine period.
Thank you, Duncan. And now let's turn to politics. The battle between Biden and Bernie is on. The former vice president and senator from Vermont are in a heated battle for delegates. Bernie Sanders picked up the endorsement of Reverend Jesse Jackson over the weekend and campaigned with him in Michigan. Bernie supporters are hoping this will give his campaign a boost with African-American voters. And that's a look at your headlines. We'll be back with Dr. Benjamin Chavis to talk about what's happening on the political campaign trail. That's next. Welcome back. Cory Booker became the latest former presidential candidate to endorse Joe Biden. Kamala Harris endorsed Biden on Sunday. The Reverend Jesse Jackson endorsed Bernie Sanders. All of this taking place ahead of the high-stakes Michigan primary. And here to help us sort it all out and the politics of it all is the good friend of the Kelly Wright Show and a friend of me personally, Dr. Benjamin Chavis. Good to have you.
It's good to be back.
It's kind of a surprise that Jesse Jackson came out to endorse Bernie Sanders. They went around the state of Michigan, and the Sanders campaign is hoping that will bring him more African-American votes. What say you?
Well, I know that Jesse Jackson, he's an iconic civil rights leader. He's a personal friend of mine. He's from South Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. We've worked in the civil rights movement for many years. And I think Jesse Jackson's endorsement of Bernie Sanders will help him. But I think that the trend, I'm with the Black Press of America now, Kelly, and we sort of monitor not only the voice of Black America, but what are the trends? And the trends in Black America are heading toward Vice President Biden, no question about it. And now with the endorsement of Senator Kamala Harris, who was a presidential candidate herself, International Women's Day, she chose International Women's Day to make her announcement to support Vice President Biden. So I think right now, I think Biden probably is going to take Michigan if the black vote comes out. And right now, if you look at what happened in South Carolina, if you look what happened in the Super Tuesday, I know something was going on right now in Mississippi. Black votes are engaged. They will also be voting on Tuesday.
And on Sunday, Joe Biden was actually in Mississippi campaigning.
Yes, he was campaigning at the leading African-American Baptist Church in Jackson, Mississippi. Pastor Young, who's the president of the National Baptist Convention, hosted him. And then he spoke at Tougaloo College. a historic, one of the HBCUs, Historical Black College and University, leading in Jackson, Mississippi. Now he's in touring Michigan with the endorsement of Senator Cory Booker, Senator Kamala Harris, and homeboy from Detroit, Eric Michael Dyson, Dr. Eric Michael Dyson. Yesterday also endorsed Vice President Biden.
Yeah, so when you factor that in, and of course, Dyson is known as being a leading person, a leading figure of influence there in Detroit. And Michael Eric Dyson, the author of so many books and so acquainted with the hip hop generation. Do you think that will bring in younger millennials?
Absolutely. Michael Dyson is also an icon in hip hop.
That's
as
true.
well as an academic professor, intellectual, one of the leading black intellectuals in the world.
And let's not forget your involvement in the hip-hop generation, because as we look at the millennials, a lot of millennials, many people are saying will lean towards Bernie, but it's really difficult to say who they will decide. They want to make sure that someone is bringing their concerns
Well, I think
to the
at first Bernie was leading among black millennials, but I think this trend is, trends are very important. Black folks are making up their mind. I can say for the record that in 2020, the black vote is much more energized than we were in 2016. And I believe that Vice President Biden is going to be the beneficiary of the re-energized black voting population.
It will be interesting to see how this all plays out tomorrow when the primaries get launched and people go
Super
to the
Tuesday
polls.
too.
Super Tuesday too, and on the sidelines will be the President of the United States. We'll see what happens with him, how he'll reach out to the African American vote as well. Dr. Benjamin Chavis, good for you to be with us.
Thank you. It's always good to be on the Kelly Wright Show.
Thank you. Coming back with much more after this. Welcome back. Well, as we mentioned earlier in the show, the number of cases of the coronavirus continue to rise dramatically. Each day, more cases are reported, and the message coming from the Trump administration and health experts is contradictory. Political analyst Jamila Bey is here now to talk about what's going on. And welcome to the program, Jamila. And
thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, and we're kind of like the Wakanda thing, the way we greet each other now.
Exactly.
Due to the spread of coronavirus, people are kind of afraid to be within 3 feet of each other and to touch hands. And so what's the messaging coming out of our health experts as well as the White House?
Well, you put it very gently and very delicately that it's confusing. There was a really great piece explaining that the president can't merely gaslight his way out of this virus spreading. Oh, we've got all the testing. If you need a test, you'll get a test. That's not the case. Right here in D.C., we know that if you present to your primary care doctor, your chances of getting a CDC test are very low. The number of tests that we are able to get are far diminished from what people actually need. We've had 3 schools here in Washington, D.C. closed, but if you look at Washington State, where that nursing home sustained a number of fatalities, it wasn't the official government test for coronavirus that determined those people were sick. It was a bunch of very smart doctors who got together and through process of elimination, recognizing help is not coming out of Atlanta, we've got to do this ourselves. And that puts all Americans, all of us at risk.
How do we get caught so flat-footed on this when the news from China was spreading that this coronavirus is spreading? We have not been able to contain it. It was already out at least 6 weeks before we actually saw some people getting engaged. Now, the World Health Organization was out in front of it, but where was our CDC and where was the President of the United States?
Well, to be blunt, they were asleep at the wheel at the White House, and they have been asleep at the wheel since they got into the White House. The number of positions that are unfilled at the Centers for Disease Control, the fact that this particular administration absolutely did cut and gut the infrastructure that would have allowed a pandemic response team to be robust. There aren't the people in those positions to be doing this work. So when you had a few doctors 4 years ago say, hey, you know, we really need to be looking at vaccinations for pandemic kind of things. You know, we remember MERS, we remember SARS. We need to be thinking, well, what's the next iteration of that? This White House pretty much said, that's not as important, let's do another rally. This political looking at things, I don't want to be too egregious in how I say it, but make no mistake, this White House is responsible. The fact that you've got members of Congress who don't understand what vaccination is and why it's important, and that you can't give a flu shot for coronavirus. It's a problem, and it's due to the lack of political will to make Americans healthy.
So now the lack of political will and the fact that you were saying you don't want to be egregious, yet the president himself has tweeted saying that there's fake news on this and that it's a politicalization of this disease. But let's be clear, people are dying. And they're dying here in America.
They're dying in America, and they're going to continue to die.
But what about the billions of dollars that he signed into place to kind of try to stanch the flow of this, or the spread of this disease? Is that enough?
The toothpaste is out of the tube. Try and put that toothpaste back in. What we can do now, you know, it's sad, but it's true. The masks don't matter. Unless you have the virus, putting on a mask isn't doing anything. The social distancing. My mom is older than 70. She can't go to church right now. The risk is there. If you're going to get on a plane and you've got asthma, you've got diabetes, you're someone who's...
You've got a problem.
You should really think about the fact that it's not just you'll feel bad, it's the fact that you'll get sick, your lungs can fail you, you could die. And we've known how these things work, but what happens when you gut the agency that has all of the resources? The very
agency responsible for
it's just, this is, you know, Hurricane Katrina was a poor response in 2005. I would argue that this is a worse response than Hurricane Katrina. And we're closing schools, we're closing multi-million-dollar conferences every single day. It's not just the economics of it, it's the fact that people's lives are at stake.
Jamila Bey, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, and hopefully everyone's hearing, everyone. We'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. We often hear some information about the environment and how environmental issues are affecting us, but something we don't talk about quite enough is the fact that environmental racism is real. We're so glad to have Damali Rhett Harding back to talk about this very issue. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
It's good to have you. You know, people will say you're pulling the race card, and yet are we? Because there is an environmental toxicity that exists that we don't talk enough about, and it's happening in African American communities and poor communities.
So we are pulling the race card. We have scientific studies. So the latest was 2018. The EPA actually did another study that proved that disproportionately communities of color and disproportionately Black communities are affected by particulate matter. And you start thinking about particulate matter, and that includes everything we would think of in smog, all of things like lead. And so we're disproportionately affected by that, and that has impacts on everything from cancer, asthma, birth rates. When you start thinking about children and children's education, and where does that gap start in terms of development?
Why does this happen?
This happens because poor communities typically aren't given a voice. This also happens in areas where Black representation by population may be large, but you look at the political machinations and people who are in charge and people who vote and people who are sitting on councils at the county government, at the state government. It also happens because corporations, have an interest. You think about the oil belt in Louisiana and think about how many billions of dollars that contributes to the state coffers. And so if you have something that's a long-term impact, say Cancer Alley, it's hard to prove in the short term, and by that time it's too late.
For those communities that are embroiled in this environmental racism and seeing toxic sludge or other things happening in their communities, what can we do to best remedy the situation and help them get out of harm's way?
So the first thing that we're doing is the awareness of it. So again, I mentioned that there have been study after study after study that have been proven, that's shown that this really exists. And then the second thing that we can do is start to think about how can we provide health services? How can we provide, long-term services that start from womb to the end for people that are affected by this?
Let me go to my notes here and just change the focus, still remaining on the same focus, but what sources for electrical power are U.S. households able to access, and why does our community miss that sometimes?
That's a great question. So this is one of the benefits of renewables, and one of the benefits of renewables is that it mitigates, it provides power access to people where we have energy deserts all across the country. We have energy poverty is a real thing in our community, but renewable sources provide the ability to power your lights, heat your home, and do these things without having the particulate matter in the air, without having, worrying about fumes that are coming from generation from coal, without having to worry about, am I next to a nuclear plant and there's something that they're not telling me? And so having the ability to really take ownership through things like community solar or through even just putting more renewable sources where people are is a real boon to our community.
It is indeed, and renewable energy provides not just a source of energy for us that's sustainable, but it also provides a source of jobs.
Yes. So in our communities, again, renewable energies, where they're putting these are communities where they need it, right? So you're thinking about solar in, the middle of Pennsylvania. You're thinking about wind farms that are across Texas that, in places that have been decimated by, old steel towns or old coal towns. West Virginia is actually one of the best sources on the East Coast for wind. And you take all of those people who have skilled laborers who understand, and you put wind there, and now you have something that actually literally won't kill you when you go to work every day.
You always bring something very good and eye-opening to the community at large when you divulge your information, and we just appreciate you being on the show here to talk to us about our environment and how we can take care of ourselves in our African American communities. Damali Red-Harding, good for you to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I had to get some energy to say that. I was losing my voice there. Coming back with a lot more after this. Don't go anywhere. Thank you, Damali. Back with more now, The Kelly Wright Show. We thank you for being a part of us. As we age, we often have to make adjustments in our lives. The way we do things or where we live are the most common changes we experience when we prepare for end-of-life issues. Donna Smith is here to talk about this right now to help us navigate these changes and how family members can help. Donna, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, but we're talking about something a lot of people don't like to discuss, and that is their demise, their death. But yet we're all guaranteed that we're going to do that. So why are we afraid to talk about it?
Well, polls indicate that 100% of us are going to die at some point. And so we might as well prepare. I work for Compassion and Choices. It's the oldest nonprofit that deals with end-of-life issues. And so part of my job is to go around and educate people around end-of-life issues, specifically in the African American community. Kelly, it's as if culturally we're afraid that if we talk about death, it's going to kill us. But it's not. And not talking about it is the source of a lot of problems in our community. For example, when I was growing up, I had an aunt who used to fall asleep at every meal. And I would ask my other aunts and uncles and my parents, what's going on with Auntie? And they said, well, you know, baby, she got that itis. I said, really? That itis, that's what they called it. Well, 25 years later, I went to the doctor and the doctor said I had that itis. You know what it was? Diabetes. But we never talked about it. Had I known that that ran in my family, because a lot of members had itis, I could have maybe been more proactive about not getting it, but we didn't talk. So culturally, we have to talk about not only end-of-life issues, but chronic issues. What's going on in our family? Who has what? So we can prepare to live our lives better.
So when we're facing these end-of-life issues, whether it's diabetes or any of the health disparities, what is it we have to do to improve our lives as we grow older, to be more mentally, physically, and spiritually aware of who we are?
So the presentation that I give is called Education, Empowerment, and Advocacy. You need to be educated on your chronic diseases, your terminal diseases. That way you are empowered to make informed decisions. You don't just let things happen to you, you make things happen for you because you have options at every stage. And then that allows you to become your own best advocate.
Okay.
So we need to educate ourselves, empower ourselves, and make sure that we're advocating on behalf of ourselves and our family members.
Well, that's good, and it's important because I was noticing here in some of the notes about what you do, there's also Medicaid in dying.
It's called medical aid in dying.
Medical aid in dying.
So medical aid in dying is law in 10 jurisdictions, including Washington, D.C., where a terminally ill patient under very prescribed conditions, for example, they have to be terminally ill and within 6 months of dying, can request a prescription from their doctor that if they take that medication would end their lives. The first law came about in 1997 in Oregon, and it was really as a result of those with HIV, AIDS, and very aggressive forms of cancer. They were suffering unnecessarily at the end of life, and they wanted an option rather than to suffer unnecessarily.
Now, is that an option that would be welcomed in the Black community? Because it would suggest that it's almost like self-induced suicide.
Well, it's not suicide, and that's in the law.
Okay.
The disease is killing the person. You have to be terminally ill and within 6 months of dying. And that has to be determined by 2 doctors to give you that prognosis and diagnosis. And the 6 months is the same trigger that allows you to go into hospice. And that's very important. We all know people who are terminal, but if they don't have that 6-month prognosis, they aren't eligible for that law. So
these are right to end life issues that you're talking about in that particular regard with that law?
Yes. We call it end of life options.
Life. And of course, I covered the Terry Schiavo case years ago, and that was a very troubling case for many people, but it really weighed on people heavily in terms of their morality and how they choose life and how they choose to end life. So what kind of advanced directives should one make to avoid these kind of pitfalls that create a moral dilemma for the family as they try to engage in what's happening with their loved one dying?
So let's be clear, the advance directive does not include medical aid in dying.
Okay.
It's only available in 10 jurisdictions. If you're outside of those jurisdictions currently, it's not accessible to you. However, people's morals vary from individual to individual.
Right.
And this whole movement is about allowing that terminally ill patient to determine what they want. If they don't want medical aid in dying, that's great. They should not use it. However, if this is an option that they want available, it's something that people should certainly consider. The advance directive is a tool that allows you to educate your family about what your wants and desires are at the end of life.
And it's good that that you're making that perfectly clear, because a lot of people not just the African American community, but people throughout the United States, they don't always know what to do for end-of-life issues. Now I have a sister-in-law who's a funeral director, and one of the concerns that she always has is that a lot of people are not prepared for when their loved one passes, and then they're left asking for a GoFundMe.
Right. And so, as culturally, in the African American culture, we don't talk about death till you're dead, and then that's too late. The time to make these decisions and have these conversations is not when you're in an emergency room.
Right.
It's when you're relatively healthy and happy and can make these decisions calmly and can communicate those to your family and loved ones.
All right.
Preparation is the key.
Preparation is the key, and while we're living, let's enjoy the life that we have.
Let's enjoy
and prepare
life
for
to
it
the
accordingly.
fullest.
Donna Smith, CompassionateChoices.org is where we can reach you.
Definitely. CompassionateChoices.org.
All right, thank you very much. And that's a look at what we're talking about in terms of your end-of-life issues, but there's always life ahead on The Kelly Wright Show. Stay with us. We'll be back. Special friend of the Kelly Wright Show joins me now. Christian Benjamin is here to update us on his nationwide birthday fundraiser that he talked about and actually did it. And he's giving us an update. Plus, he's going to talk about his Monday motivation. Welcome back, Christian.
Thanks.
Good to
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank
you. So let's start with the birthday bash that you gave, because it was actually to help a very worthy cause. What was it?
Yeah. So those young people at the Covenant House, ages 18 to 21. They don't really get to celebrate or have anything. You know, people kind of forget about them, that they exist over in the DC area. So I just wanted to do a birthday party for them, not to celebrate myself, but to make sure they know they're still loved and cared for.
Let's talk about the Covenant House, because it is nationwide. You help the DC chapter. The Covenant House benefits who?
The Covenant House is a homeless shelter for youth, young adults that, that forgotten age. There's places that kids can go, and there's a lot of shelters that are for older adults, but they're scary for the 17 to 21-year-old age bracket. So they generate opportunities there for them, like GED and classes, and people like myself that can come through and give them a good word. So that, like you said, they're in every city. It's just that I work with the DC chapter. I just can't, reached out to the DC chapter and went with there.
And how did that go? Because I actually attended that, and I saw a good turnout, and I saw your vision come to reality in trying to utilize social media and for your birthday to help someone in need. Yeah. And I thought that was very good to see.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming, because you took the time out of your Saturday to stop by and support. That was amazing. And the people came by and supported. It was a blessing to see their faces when they opened up their gifts and saw their names on the birthday cake. I will never forget it. It was the best birthday I've ever been a part of.
And they felt that they were no longer forgotten, but actually appreciated.
Exactly.
And what I liked about what I saw, Christian, is that it wasn't Christmas time.
Right.
It wasn't Thanksgiving.
Right.
It was actually out of the box kind of thinking, because you were there to show up to say, hey, we're here for you every day.
Exactly.
And I think if we could do that in our community, and we just had a couple of guests about a week ago talking about the fact that African Americans are very charitable, that we give $11.4 billion a year, and you're a young entrepreneur, you're successful in your business, and now you're out motivating people to give. And you also have a program called Monday Motivation. Tell me about that, because it's Monday and we need some motivation.
Perfect timing, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Monday Motivations. It started out as a newsletter I was doing just to send out to friends and family, just because on Mondays, I love Mondays, and everybody waits until Friday and say they love the weekend, because I work in the creative field. So I love the fact that I have an opportunity every day. Every day is going to be different.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the fact that everybody, it was, I hate Mondays, oh, this is Monday. So I just wrote a newsletter to some friends, but they, one friend shares it with another. Somebody I don't know shares it with somebody else. It became thousands of subscribers, and they were anticipating. I would miss a Monday and get emails that say, hey, are you okay? Are you doing okay?
Yeah,
From people I'd never met
yeah.
before. So I knew it was a thing. So that kind of projected into the book that I'm just finishing up called Monday Motivation.
Okay, so tell me about Monday Motivation beyond what you've done socially. How are people responding to you?
Yeah.
Other than saying, "Hey, Christian, we haven't seen it, but now you've got this book coming out." So what's the benefit of having a motivational Monday?
You know, you are around more people during the Monday through Friday, right? You have that's the bulk of your week. There's 5 days of the work week per se, and 2 days of the weekend. I feel like when you start your week off with an idea that you can work on something conceptually or mentally or spiritually that you just think about in your soul, you kind of like, you know what, I'm going to work on that this week. You'll end your week like, one, it's your progression, right? You feel better. You worked on something mentally or spiritually. It doesn't have to be some big giant goal. We look at our goals, these big giant goals. It's just little steps
Little
to take
steps at a
to get to who
time.
we want to be.
Okay.
Right, that makes
like
us
the
feel better.
inchworm. You keep going.
Exactly.
You might get there at a snail's pace, but you get there. You
still
get to
going.
the finish line because you keep going.
When you sit there and stare at the big picture.
I say I'm like you. I
looking.
love every day because every day is a blessing from God. Every day is a gift from God. So I try to live each day as if it were my last, which means I want to put my best foot forward. And I'll talk about the negative things that go on in my own personal life, and I don't really want to talk about negatives that go in other people's lives. But I think if I can keep myself motivated on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'll never have a stormy Monday that I can't overcome.
Exactly. There's nothing you can overcome. I feel like if you wake up that morning that you wake up, that's another opportunity for you to do better and do great. And you always, none of us are perfect, right? But we're perfectly made. So we always have a chance to live on our purpose.
Yeah, I love that. Christian Benjamin, you're welcome back anytime because,
thank you.
You know, of course, you're a young man doing some great things, and you're teaching all of us how we can get behind each other, to motivate each other and help each other. So to find your Monday motivation when it comes out, where do we go?
Right now, christianbenjamin.com. Go to my website. It's just a simple log. You just put your email in there, and you'll get an email back confirming and thanking you and giving you a Monday motivation to read to see what it's about. And then every Monday after that, I'm shooting them out.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for motivating us.
Thank you.
Peace out. God bless you, man. Good to have you.
Always a blessing.
It's Christian Benjamin. We'll be back with a lot more. Don't go anywhere. You've been motivated. Come on back. Welcome back. Our next guest is a talented rapper who speaks to truth, to issues that are affecting our daily lives. We're so happy to have Priest the Nomad as our guest today. And Priest, good of you to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
And it's actually
Definitely.
Priest the Nomad.
Priest the Nomad.
Okay.
Yeah, just the way it rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
You know?
So look, you're on your album that took about 5 years in the making.
Yeah.
In that process, what did you discover and creatively produce to bring to us?
Yeah, well, you know, art imitates life, right? And so basically I started the project with one kind of lens and one purpose and everything, and then it evolved. I had to put it on, I had to shelve it, put it back on a back burner, take care of family, take care, and that's the whole manhood project, right? Because we have to, I had to put it to the side what I wanted to do and take care of my children, take care of my, family and wife and all that. And
You
then
speak like a responsible father and husband trying to do the right
we out
thing.
here.
Yeah.
We're out here.
Now, we are out here. I get the drift. And let's be more specific. We're out here as black men taking care of our families.
care of
We're
business.
not thugs.
Definitely.
We're actually taking care of our families. Having said that, you've got a project called the Manhood Project. Tell me about it.
Indeed. The Manhood Project really deals with the journey and the processes of black boys and black men. And living in America specifically through my lens in the area of the DC area, but it's like every other city, across the nation where we are. The challenges of being part of a systemic infrastructure that you don't really realize you're a part of, and then growing and evolving and then becoming a man in that type of environment, and then just dealing with things. I mean, joys, pains, all that type of stuff. So it's not like super, there's some things that are heavy on the album and there's some things that we're celebrating on the album because life is totality, you know what I'm saying? So, but I think it's it's definitely dealing with some issues that are controversial, like the black male masculinity issue, things like that. What's toxic and what's, feminine and that type of thing.
It sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear the entire project. We're going to show one of your songs at the end of this, but I think what strikes me is that you're a conscious rapper. You're trying to bring today's issues to the minds of your listeners who can say, oh, I do need to think about that. And we're finding more and more hip-hop artists and rappers are going back to what we used to have in the 70s where we had message music. I'd like to call the artists like Marvin Gaye and Earth, Wind and Fire the griots of their time.
Yes.
Because they were sharing stories with us.
Yeah, and in me growing up, it was the Public Enemies, the KRS Ones, that type of deal. And who made me read? Chuck D made me go read. Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X and a whole bunch of our history and things, saying names that I didn't really recognize, right? And I'm like, who is this? Who is that?
So it challenged you to read.
Yeah. And that, to me, it was like, wow, I want to have that impact where I motivate, people to go think differently or to go research or to just, think about things they probably don't even think about. They're just in.
So, Priest, in addition to talking about fatherhood and helping boys turn into good men, you're also dealing with a very serious issue that's affecting a lot of black communities throughout the country, and that's gentrification. Tell me about your efforts to talk about that.
You know what? It wasn't really it was a personal thing. The song that I have, "Can't Lose the Soul," which I have the video for. There was an incident. There've been a number of incidents, right? And they're all across the nation. It's a national issue. We've seen the Oakland situation, Barbecue Becky, all of that type of stuff, right? In D.C., there were a number of incidents back to back. There was the Metro PCS incident, which sparked the whole go-go, Don't Mute D.C., Howard University, all of that. Before that, though, there was an incident with a restaurant that I was involved in personally. And it was a celebrity chef friend of mine, Chef Rock Harper, Hell's Kitchen. He's a friend of mine, and he pointed out to me this restaurant that was opening in Shaw that had after-hour spot, chicken and oysters, and it had famous rappers with chicken beaks. And we were the chicken, And he was like, what do you think about this? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
So I put it on, let me touch the community. So hit Facebook, posted on Facebook, went viral. Tagged a lot of my community artist friends, and it went viral. Yeah, so, and it was like, tried to speak to it was a white owner in Clarendon who has restaurants in Clarendon, and he set up shop in Shaw. And it was like, they wrote us off at first, because they didn't know who we were, and they had a black manager, and we tried to talk to him, and he kind of wrote us off at first, and like, who are you, that type of thing. And I was like, oh, you'll find out. And so Channel 9 was another news station we caught wind of it. And
so the point you're making, though, is that know us, appreciate our art and our culture, but don't malign us and marginalize us.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you have to check in. That's the thing.
Check in.
Gentrification is not necessarily a bad thing. It's unfortunately has a bad stigma because it's not done properly, right? And it's not engaged and inclusive of the historical and indigenous peoples that were there.
Well, Priest, love what you're doing. We're going to play your music, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Keeping that social conscience out there in the black community and beyond, because a lot of people love hip hop.
And it's just good music.
Yeah, it's just good music.
We just want to make good music as well.
All right. He's Priest. Make sure you check out his music. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more from Priest the Nomad. Back now with my final word. I want to reiterate the fact that this is not a time to panic in terms of dealing with the coronavirus, not to be fearful, not to be dreadful, but to be proactive in safeguarding your family and protecting your community. Each one, teach one, and reach one. Hopefully, throughout today's program, you've been ignited and righted to stand united, to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. We leave you now with Priest the Nomad and his song, Can't Lose the Soul. Peace.
Talk about soul. The gentrification thing, man, it's happening everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Atlanta, soul. Chicago, Oakland. You know what I'm saying? Everywhere, man. It's unique in my area, man. I'll tell you where I'm from, though. Yeah, listen. In the booth, I'm a cyclone. Never with the average. We landed on that nation's cap from the middle passage. With not vegan, but put it to your cabbage. Cock the fifth back. Yell, she ready like Tim Haddish. Hola, hola. They don't want us, they attack us. We walk them city streets and we make kings from addicts. Some out-of-towners come here and bring all their baggage to Chocolate City. Now they complain.